Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support on GunGuyTV. I really do appreciate it. I have my friend Sam Paredes with me here today, and the reason why I have Sam here is because magically we went sort of from 2019 to 2020, and there's a whole bunch of buttons that get flipped in state law all of a sudden when the new year shows up, and I have no idea what's happening. Well, I do have some, but Sam really knows. So Sam, thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you for being willing to give us an update here in California on all the nonsense which has now become law.
Joel, it's always an honor and a pleasure to be with you. And yeah, our folks, your listeners and our members need to know how they are going to be, how their rights are going to be infringed upon here in the Golden State in 2020. But we will not leave them hopeless.
We will not leave them hopeless. That's right. Well, so what's new in 2020 for California gun owners?
Well, the governor, Governor Newsom, he really has never seen a gun law that he didn't like, a gun control law that he didn't like. So he signed a bunch of bills. AB 879 by Assemblyman Gloria. This requires the sale of firearm, get this, precursor parts to be conducted or processed through a licensed firearm precursor part dealer. In other words, if you want to buy a part for your gun, you're going to have to go through a dealer who is licensed to sell you those parts. You can no longer mail order them. It's basically going to be like ammunition. You're going to have to buy them through these licensed dealers. What they're trying to do is trying to say, well, you know, all of these people that are building these ghost guns and these guns that government knows nothing about and that we are finding at the scenes of crimes. Well, actually, what they're doing is that they are finding them, but they're not the guns that are being used in the commission of crimes. People have just built them. And as you know, Joel, since our country was founded, Americans have had the right to build their own personal guns in their own homes without that right being infringed by the federal and state governments. Well, here in California, they think that we're special and that the application of the Constitution shouldn't apply to us the way it does for all of the other rogues who live outside of the borders of the Golden State. So when you go and you buy a spring, a pin, a safety, a trigger kit, a trigger, a lower or an upper, a barrel, anything like this, you're going to have to buy them through a licensed precursor part dealer. Automatically, all dealers will become one of these precursor part dealers, and people who might not be in the gun business with an FFL in the California dealer's license, but they just want to sell parts, they will have to apply and receive one of these precursor part dealers licenses or certifications in order to be able to sell them. So,
is there going to be well, first of all, when does this law take effect?
This law, I erased my note. I believe
I just went and got my pen so I could take notes if I had to. I didn't do it earlier.
It's on our website at gunownersca.com.
Okay.
And you go to legislation and latest legislation, and it'll give you all of the implementation dates. I believe this one is July 1st.
Well, it's important for them to know. So as long as they know that, as long as we know where we can find out, but but it's not in effect yet. It doesn't sound like
that is correct.
Okay,
that is correct.
And then
they haven't issued any certifications to any dealers. There are no precursor part dealers.
So do we as yet know what constitutes a precursor part? Why do I get the feeling I just opened a can of worms?
Yeah, boy. We can fish for 10 years with all the worms that you just
that's what I'm afraid of.
No, there's no indication and really no direction from the legislature as to what constitutes a precursor part. So they're leaving it up to the expertise at the Department of Justice Firearms Bureau to write regulations as to what constitutes a precursor part. of course,
Expertise of the Firearms Bureau is a bit of an oxymoron. It's like jumbo shrimp. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but that's so true. It's indicative on how they are running all of the programs that they've been charged to run by the legislature. They're not doing any of them very well. As a matter of fact, not only not very well,
all kinds of folks that can't buy ammo,
badly.
For example.
Oh my goodness gracious! Shall we go there? 600.
Sure, but before we do, I just dawned on me. I know I'm going to get questions about what kind of shirt, because people, for some reason, we're talking about guns, and somebody's going to want to know, what shirt am I wearing? I guarantee you. Get that. So here you are. This is it's my One Punch Man shirt. So there you go. That was a Christmas present from my kids because I actually like to watch One Punch Man. Anybody that can knock out any monster with one punch is okay with me. All right. Anyways, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. So, all right. So let's go to the ammo law. What's going on with that?
Well, first of all, we don't know what precursor parts include. We don't know if that includes a flat piece of metal that could be bent into a lower receiver. We don't know if it includes a bar of stainless steel that has not quite yet had the bore drilled out and the rifling put in. We don't know if it constitutes a block of aluminum that can be milled into a lower AR receiver. We don't know if it includes all of the plastic replacement grip systems that you can buy for a lot of your Glock type guns, those that will accept interchangeable grip and lowers. So we don't know. We don't know which springs, which levers, which hammers, which triggers, which strikers. We don't know yet. We don't know which sights constitute precursor parts. So we're waiting. We're in limbo.
Do we know if there's going to be a background check required for this stuff?
It's going to be treated pretty much like like buying ammunition. You're going to have to go through the whole process. You're going to have to be a lawful, eligible citizen of California in order to purchase these parts. So it's going to be crazy. It's
so just like ammo, or similar, every time I want to buy, however they define a precursor part, so make sure I understand. If I'm buying a part for a gun, whether it's a built upper for an AR, or whether it's a new trigger, drop-in trigger, or whether it's a spring set for my revolver or whatever.
Yes.
If those are considered precursor parts, then I'm going to have to buy them from a licensed dealer, and
Correct.
I'm going to have to incur an expense for a background check every time I buy those parts. I got that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah. And you and I know that some guns have hundreds of parts.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And so I have no idea how they're going to keep track of them. Some of these parts you can actually go and buy at Home Depot for purposes other than building a gun. And I don't know, are they going to, require Home Depot to acquire a precursor part license for any parts or pins or screws or bolts or nuts that could be used to fashion a gun?
As a practical matter, and I don't want to go down the rat hole here, but as a practical matter, the truth is these laws are totally unenforceable.
Absolutely.
The ammo law, really, it's enforceable with people who are actually going to try to obey it.
Correct.
The precursor parts law is going to be enforceable with folks who are trying to obey it. But
Correct.
The people who have friends in other states who can buy ammo and just give it to them, or the guy who goes because he happens to be in Las Vegas for the weekend, and while he's there, he stops at his friend's house because he ordered parts and they got delivered there and he's going to bring them home. There's nobody between Las Vegas and California that if you drive the speed limit is going to stop you and ask you about it. And if they do ask you about it, then you just, I don't want to answer that question. Didn't you pull me over for a citation? The truth is, I don't know how they even conceive that they're going to, and here's the other thing. What are they going to do? Serialize every spring? Right? Where
Well,
do you,
they're still, yeah, they're still hanging their hope on micro stamping. So, yeah, I guess they can require that every spring, every pin, every
hope
screw.
springs eternal, I guess. Hope springs eternal. Sorry, that was a really bad
I
pun.
say
I apologize.
hope springs infernal. In some
Infernal. I
cases.
think you might be right. That's nuts. It's nuts what they're doing. I mean, the
Yes,
whole object is just to make having guns harder to acquire,
that's all they're
and then you
trying to
can't
do.
make it harder for you to fix it and or build your own or whatever the case might be. It's
The
it's kind of
legislature
crazy.
doesn't want to know anything about facts. They don't. They don't want to understand how guns are made and why they're made and how they've been made for over 200 years in America. They don't want to know anything about that. All they want to do is know how they can control them. That's it. That's it. That's all they want to do.
Well, and then you got Elizabeth Warren, who answered a question at a town hall when asked, after the church shooting in Texas, which was, in 6 seconds ended with the death of the shooter and unfortunately the death of two parishioners there.
Mm-hmm.
But only two, not that the death of two people is a minor thing, but two compared to 200 does make a difference. Or two
Absolutely.
compared to 26, as in the previous one, makes a difference. And her answer when asked, would you support concealed carry, universal concealed carry or concealed carry reciprocity? No. And she shook her head like that. And I thought, lady, maybe it's because if you were to become president, you'd be surrounded by armed guards all the time.
Yeah.
But there you are. Well, anyway, I'm sorry. I digressed and I went down the tubes here. What other laws are we having to face now? And is there more about that one that you'd like to talk about?
No, that's plenty. Go to our website and to get more of the details, the implementation date, and all of that. And it won't start until they actually write regulations and they define who can be dealers and what they have to go through in order to be certified as dealers. Another bill, AB 893 by Assemblyman Gloria. This one legislatively bans gun shows at Del Mar Fairgrounds. You see, the board there banned gun shows, and then the court said you can't do it on a public facility. You cannot ban gun shows. So the legislature said, "Oh yeah, well we're going to do it legislatively and ban gun shows, regardless of what the court said and the rationale." So you can bet your sweet pippy that will go back to the courts. We have AB 1297 by the illustrious Assemblyman McCarty of Sacramento, that on the face of it, kind of might make sense to some people. And what it says is that sheriffs have to charge the actual cost of what it takes to process a CCW to anybody who applies for a CCW in their jurisdiction. Now that kind of makes sense, but when you realize that this was done because Assemblyman McCarty was so ticked off at Sheriff Scott Jones, one of our Second Amendment CCW issuing heroes in California, who has issued 6,000 CCWs, and he was saying that, or he was being criticized by an audit that said that it actually cost more than $100 to process each CCW. Well, Sheriff Jones had been working with his budget and his staff and volunteers in order to be able to provide this service and to allow people to exercise their rights to carry guns. He pretty much is a shall issue sheriff, but and he had been returning to the county budget. I believe it was upwards of $500,000 he refunded to them that he did not spend. But McCarty was upset that other residents of the county are subsidizing the issuing of CCWs, and he found that to be abhorrent. So he thinks that by writing this legislation, somehow he's going to fix that problem, and so that's a bad deal. And what it does is it pretty well guarantees that the cost of buying CCW or paying for CCWs statewide is probably going to go up, and that's a shame. We have here's one, AB 1669 by Assemblyman Bonta. This is a very scary bill. What they did is they reduced the cost of a dealer record of sales to $1. And then they added an additional fee that is up to $35, $40 that they can charge. So they had been criticized for so long that the dealer record of sales fee was supposed to pay for a background check and not anything else.
Right.
Well, they wanted to, they had such a surplus of money in that fund that they wanted to spend on other things. And they had been criticized and criticized by us. So what they did is they actually reduced the cost of doing a DROS to the actual cost. It only costs about $1 to do a background check because they push a button and it's done. It checks all of the databases and it's really done.
This
And
is
they've
just a
got
way
this
for
other-
them to rob the piggy bank again.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they've got this other fee that's supposed to cover all other expenditures within the Firearms Bureau, and of course it's open-ended. They can raise it every time, and they can actually raise the $1 fee for DROSs every year. So we can expect that under these laws that the costs of purchasing firearms in the state of California are going to continue to rise, probably on an annual basis. Again, you can expect a lawsuit to be filed against this bill because a fee is supposed to be identified to a particular to cover a particular cost or function the government is doing, a particular one. This one is open to fund anything that they want to fund at DOJ. That would be called a tax, not a fee. So that would require a 2/3 vote of the legislature, which this bill did not receive, and probably would not have received, because we have a handful of moderate Democrats who would not support this kind of a tax, and so they're just trying to price us out of the market. There's no question about it. We have SB 61 that prohibits, makes it so you can't buy more than one gun per month of any kind. Rifle, shotgun, handgun. It limits it to one gun per month.
Now that's been the case with
rationing.
handguns for a long time, but not long guns, right?
Right. So now it's all guns. You can only buy one gun per month. Gun rationing, ostensibly to prevent all of these criminals who are going to gun stores and buying 100 guns and handing them out to their buddies, or 2 guns every month and handing them to their boyfriends or girlfriends who are gang members or anything like that.
This is about
but in
control
reality,
again, because it's a lot like the 10-day waiting period, which does absolutely nothing. Let me give you an example. I carry a gun, as do you, because my sheriff has issued me a permit from many years ago, and I keep it current. So I walk into the gun store and I buy a gun while I'm carrying a gun. And then I pay for the gun while I'm carrying a gun. And then they'll make me wait 10 days, not because they can't do a background check while I'm standing there to find out that I'm a legal person. Not only that, I've got a concealed carry permit in the state of California, which if you've got one of those, you've been put through the mill to begin with and you've been checked in every way your doctor didn't. And so now I'm standing there. I've got to wait 10 days. And the reason I have to wait 10 days is because, by George, if they gave me that gun, I might hurt somebody with it. Never mind the one that I'm carrying on my hip.
Yeah, you need that cooling off period.
I do,
because they have no logical rationale for doing this.
No, there is no logic to any of this stuff at all.
Like I said, it's all about control, and it's crazy. It's absolute craziness. The Senator Portantino, who was the author of SB 61, also wrote and passed SB 172. And this is a bill that talks about elder care facilities and how they can legally keep their firearms, the firearms of their residents, legally stored, and puts a ridiculous burden on the operators of senior care facilities as to how they are going to be required to store the firearms of their residents. Now, mind you, there are tons of residents that are there who have their full mental capabilities and are shooters and competitors, and they are being forced to lock up their guns, and they're being kept by these facilities in secure locations, and it's a violent violation of the Second Amendment rights of some of our senior citizens. So it's not a good thing. And also, this bill, makes it illegal for anybody between the ages of 18 and one day before their 21st birthday from purchasing a semi-automatic firearm. So they can't buy semi-autos. They can't buy any guns, actually. You have to wait till you're 21 in order to buy any gun. So here we have a resident of the state of California who at 17, a little bit early, decides to go into the military. He's 18, trained. They send him off to foreign lands and exotic places to do amazing things with machine guns and tanks and rocket launchers and howitzers and law rockets and all kinds of things. And then they come back to the United States and they choose to get married and maybe even have a kid before they're 21. But the state of California says, you do not have the right to protect your family. Even though you've protected this country, you don't have the right to protect your family until you're 21. That is craziness.
Well, I mean, I live in San Diego County, where we have Marine bases and Navy bases here. And in San Diego, we're a military town. We love our Marines. We love our sailors. Without the Marine Corps and the Navy, this town would have many years dried up and blown away.
Yep.
In addition to not treating them correctly and not affording them their rights, in spite of the fact that they're asked to go and serve in dangerous places, think about the number of college campuses we have here and the number of, just in my county alone, we have schools here that people send their kids to from across the country, USD,
Absolutely.
UCSD. These are places that are top-notch schools here, which means somebody in some other state has packed up their kid and shipped them here, and they're living in an apartment or whatever, and they're attending school in a city in which they did not grow up, and they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and their parents are not here, and yet they're to live in this apartment building near campus and be completely defenseless the entire time they're here.
Absolutely. That is what.
If you've got a kid, that bugs the snot out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're either an adult or you're not. The state of California, the federal government, acknowledges and recognizes anybody 18 years of age and older as an adult. That means they can vote. They can serve in the military. But we're not going to allow them to exercise all of their constitutional rights because they're only kind of sort of partially adults.
Okay, so here, watch this. Now, as you know, I own a company called Practical Defense Systems. We have 17,000 students in the state of California. We train security officers in the state of California. Very recently, I retired from the firearms training aspect of that because I don't want to be on the range all the time anymore. I'm already deaf enough as it is. And I'm getting busy with this and some other things, so we're not doing that anymore. But the other training we still offer throughout the state. Now, you have to be 18 years old to be a security officer in the state. So you can take your classes, you can be a security officer, and at the age of 18, you can get a firearms permit in order to carry that firearm while on duty in uniform as a security officer. But you can't buy a gun. So now I've got, what do you got? You got the young Marine or the young sailor or the young Coast Guardsman. Right?
Right.
They want to get a part-time job because they're trying to set aside some money, and they're going to, when they're off duty, they're going to take this part-time job. So what do? They get a job in security because it makes a lot of sense. Maybe maybe they do that kind of work at work. You know, some of these kids do, I'm going to call them kids. I shouldn't. They're adults, but they're kids to me because I'm in my 60s. Yeah. But some of these young people, they're ship security. They're doing it. That's what they do. I mean, that's the mindset they got. It's a perfect fit for them, and it's an easy job for them to do because it's not hard for you know, it's not a tough job.
Right.
They get the job, they get licensed and all that kind of stuff. At work, they got guns all the time, but when they leave the job, leave the base, they go to their other job, but they can't buy a gun to use at work. Yeah. Even though they got the license. You get the license to carry it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
The nonsense prevails in California to a degree that is just, you can't make this stuff up. I know, I get it. You can't make this stuff up.
Well, let's talk about the situation with ammunition here in the state of California, the ammunition laws, and how ludicrous and crazy it is. Here we have 345,547 ammunition background checks were reported by the Department of Justice to the courts. Out of that, 62,000 good guys were denied their right to purchase ammunition. And out of 345,547 background checks conducted, they prevented 101 prohibited people from buying ammunition at a retail location. That's 0.029% success ratio on this program.
But they managed to prohibit 60 some odd thousand law-abiding citizens from getting the ammo they have a right to buy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the scales of justice here, Lady Justice is doing the pirouette thingy, because it's
the troubling part is I'm really encouraged by what the president has done in his appointment of 170 some odd conservative justices to the federal bench, and the 2 justices that we now have with the Supreme Court. I'm very encouraged by all of that, but we all know, I know, if you're watching this right now, you know that the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The problem is these whack job anti-gun leftist politicians can infringe the right faster than we can get the court to do away with and correct that infringement.
Yeah.
Well, the cost of correcting the problem and in time and money and effort is enormous. It's extraordinary. Forgive me for frustration, but because I don't want to sound negative here, but I got to be honest with you. This stuff is enormously frustrating, and I know that I'm speaking for every gun owner in California when I say that.
You're absolutely correct, Joel. What our members and friends and viewers and listeners need to understand is that freedom is not free. Our founding fathers paid with blood and lives and fortunes, the loss of their families, and we are here having to fight for those freedoms again. Now, what we are waiting for and what we are very excited about is that we very definitely believe that the Supreme Court, in the next gun law that they consider, it might be this New York case that they've already heard arguments on, or it might be the upcoming New Jersey versus the Attorney General of New Jersey's case, that they have also had it up to here with the frivolous nature that many judges have used to treat the Second Amendment and what it means. So now we have a majority of members on the court who believe that the only way you can interpret the Second Amendment is not through rational basis, not through intermediate scrutiny, not even through strict scrutiny, that the only test you can use on Second Amendment cases is the text, history, and the tradition of the meaning of the words in the Second Amendment at the founding. So what does shall not be infringed mean? What did it mean then? And it's exactly what it means now.
So
And
when you
if
talk
we
about
get that
text
ruling-
history and tradition, you're not talking about text history and tradition through 2020. You're talking about text
Negative.
history and tradition through 1776 or 1779 or whatever the case might be. My dates are all screwed up. That all of these things were adopted.
That's correct. What did they mean? What did the words mean when they adopted them?
At the moment they were
That's-
penned and signed,
that's
what
correct.
did it mean?
That's-
That's what it means right now.
That's what it means right now.
And that's what
And
you're
if it-
talking about when you talk about them weighing these things not based upon these levels of scrutiny, these subjective ideas,
Yeah.
but rather going back to define the specific meaning of the text at the time that it was written, and then
That's
applying that meaning precisely the same way in 2020.
That's correct. So if they give us that, and actually, Justice Scalia was the one who originally made that point in Heller versus Washington, D.C., when he was discussing and discouraging judges from using judicial balancing tests in order, and when considering Second Amendment cases, that text, history, and tradition of the meaning of the words was the only standard that they could use. There is no balancing test. It is it an infringement as it was understood at the writing, at the founding, or not? If it is, it's unconstitutional and invalid. So,
well, and he wrote actually wrote that into his decision as instruction to the lower courts, which they have summarily ignored.
Yeah, the lower courts have seen fit to basically give the Supreme Court a middle finger, just a total disrespect in that ruling. And as a matter of fact, there are judges throughout the country that have kind of winked their eyes at state legislatures and said, "Oh, you go ahead and pass these laws. We're going to find them constitutional. It's not a problem." So the Supreme Court needs to get a handle on this and needs to corral all of the judges and give them marching orders that they cannot violate. And if we do that, every time the legislature passes another stupid, illogical, irrational, incomprehensible gun control law, we go to a federal judge and file for an injunction and have that law suspended.
Well, and I know that's Justice Thomas's desire, because he just not very famously in about a 13 or 14 page dissent the last time the court decided not to hear a challenge against a case here in California, infringement in California, said that the Second Amendment was a constitutional orphan, and that if any other amendment was treated any other constitutional right was treated in the same way, the court would most certainly act, but is elected not to with the Second Amendment. But that was prior to the appointment of the two justices by President Trump, I think. So hopefully you're right. We'll see some change there with one case or the other. I think I was reading the other day that a couple of people have said that the longer it takes for them to decide whether they'll accept this whole argument that the case they're exploring from New York is moot, the more likely it is they're going to actually rule on the case, not whether it's moot or not. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Listen, I dragged you off task, and I apologize. I do want to talk about the court stuff, but I don't want to have my subscribers throwing rocks at the computer screen or their phone because we haven't told them what else is changing in the law. So I'm sorry I dragged you off of subject there. Can we go back to the law changes so we know what they are? And I would like to talk more about
those are the laws that were signed by Governor Newsom that are impactful. There are other laws like that we actually opposed a bill that would actually reduce the penalties for people who commit violent crimes. In other words, they want to let violent felons out of prison earlier. We oppose that whole effort. Gun violence restraining orders. We have new laws that expand the number of people who can file for a gun violence restraining order to anybody who works at any school. And school is defined as school. So that could be private school, preschool, elementary, junior, senior, college, trade school. Anybody who works at a school can file for a gun violence restraining order. Now, it used to be that anybody who was a family member, and a family member was defined as anybody who had lived with the subject of the GVRO in the past 6 months. So if you had just graduated from college and you lived in a fraternity, basically every frat brother who lived with you has 6 months to file a GVRO against you if they want to. They also expanded it to include anybody, a fellow employee at a workplace. So let's just take one of your little employees in San Diego, some high-tech company, some military contractor that might have, 2, 3, 4, 10,000 employees. And a couple of guys are sitting at the lunchroom and they're talking about guns. And a server or somebody, a fellow employee walks by and overhears them talking about guns, but they only hear a snippet of the conversation and they don't understand it in context. They go to their supervisor and they say, "Oh my goodness, I saw these two guys in the lunchroom talking about guns, talking about semi-automatics or assault weapons or ARs or AKs or 9mm or, flesh-eating bullets or something like that. And I think they might come back and shoot this place up. We need to get a gun violence restraining order against them." So the supervisor says, "Yeah, I think that's scary enough." The person asks for a gun violence restraining order. A judge has 24 hours to act on the request. There is no methodology to check on the validity of the request or the fact that the maliciousness of the request, if there is malice in filing for the request. Then they notify the police. The police show up at the subject's home, knock. Typically, they are not dressed in their dress blues or their greens or tans. They typically have body armor and have an M4 hanging in front of them, and
Wow.
some of them have balaclavas and helmets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When they show up and they say, "We're here to confiscate all of your guns." And then,
no due process.
No, there's no.
Nobody takes the
notification,
time
no
to
serving.
go and investigate, even do a database search, even to look and see, has this person ever committed a crime? Does this person have any kind of crazy background? Have they been adjudicated a mental whack job? Nothing. Nobody bothers to do any of that. They just
None of that. None of that is
we're going
a
to
part of
take
the
the
law.
word of this random individual over here who overheard a part of a conversation, and then we're going to go confiscate guns.
That's correct. And the accused person never gets to know who it is that accused them of it. You don't know. They don't tell you. It's ex parte.
That's a constitutional right to face your accuser, is it not?
Yeah, well,
Well, of course,
yes.
It's a constitutional right to have firearms and keep and bear arms. Of course, it's a constitutional right to against unlawful search and seizure. They actually have to have a reason. Of course, there's a constitutional right. I mean, this violates, off the top
Everything.
of my head, about 4 or 5 different enumerated rights in the Bill of Rights.
Yes, absolutely. It just takes the Bill of Rights and shreds it.
And tears it into shreds and throws it. We don't need that.
There's argument and that well, they're not actually being charged with a crime, so
they're having their lawfully owned and purchased property taken away, which, as you and I know, you don't ever get back. And if you do get it back, it costs you a fortune because you got to pay for an attorney and you got to pay court fees and all this other stuff to go get your gun back, and you're not going to get that money back.
And then when you get them back, you have to wait a 10-day waiting period in order to get your own guns back that they took away.
I have a friend. Okay, so I have a friend who is about the most peaceable guy on the planet. I won't mention his name or what he does for a living. Okay. He was dating a young lady. Now, this gentleman, I should say young lady. This gentleman is my age. He's in his 60s, okay? He is dating this gal who's roughly similar age, and then doesn't realize that she's about 3 fries short of a Happy Meal. And one day, she accuses him of something that he did not do and goes down to court and gets a restraining order against him.
Hmm.
So the the law enforcement shows up at his place and says, "Hey, you have a TRO, a temporary restraining order, and do you have any firearms?" Well, he's a law-abiding guy. He says, "Yeah, I do." And he says, "Okay." Well, they give him, they serve him, and then he has X number of hours, days, or whatever to then change the disposition of those. So he goes down to a gun shop that's in his neighborhood, and he says, "Hey, I'm supposed to give these to you." So he does. Now there's a court hearing. So he hires an attorney and he goes to court. Well, this chick whose elevator does not go all the way to the top does not bother to show up at the court hearing. So since she doesn't show up, the judge says, well, it's as if it was never filed, and he removes the order. And of course, in the meantime, they've run a background check on this fella and found out he's never done anything wrong in his life. He's never committed a crime in his life. He's not, he's just one of those guys. He's just a law-abiding guy. And they said, well, his attorney says, well, go get your guns back. So he calls me. It's been a week or so ago. He calls me and he says, hey, I went down to the gun store and they told me I went to go get my guns back. I figure I got to pay the guy rent or something to have the guns here. But he tells me I have to go through a background check and wait 10 days to get my own guns back.
That's right.
I said, yeah, apparently so.
Yeah. No, that's.
Now he's got to pay. So now he's paying he's had to pay for the attorney. Mm-hmm. He's had to pay the court costs. Mm-hmm. He's had to pay, now he has to pay the gun shop rent for having the guns there for however long. And now he has to also pay a dross fee for each and every one of those suckers. And now, although I don't know, I didn't ask him, but I wouldn't be surprised since a couple of the guns I think he inherited 30, 40 years ago, that they're not in the system anywhere, but now they are.
That's correct.
All because of what? Because one person made an unsubstantiated claim and that a judge then issued an order without doing any investigation whatsoever. They didn't investigate him at all. Nothing.
That's correct.
And like I said, this man, I've known this man for a long time, a long, long time. He's never committed a crime in his life. Wouldn't even think of doing so. He's just that guy. He's not. I mean, he's a law-abiding guy. He's not volatile or anything. Mm-hmm. And so it's just really strange that this idea that somebody can say something. This is the in a microcosm. This is what happens to. We just saw it happen. This is what happens when Trump appoints somebody to the Supreme Court. Accusations come out of nowhere. And then we spend millions of dollars accusing this person without any evidence whatsoever. And now in some little small way in California, people can accuse people of things and have their firearms taken away, whatever taken away, and have their whole lives turned topsy-turvy. Fortunately for this gentleman, he's a professional guy. He makes a decent living. He can afford to pay for the lawyer and all that. But he's not going to see a dime of that back.
No, correct.
Nuts.
It is crazy. And the person that's accused, they have to wait 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks before they can go before a judge to say, hey, what is this?
Yeah, it took like a month and a half. Right.
Yeah, it's
and in the meantime, the chick that makes the loon who makes the accusation, in this case, she's a loon. This loon who made this accusation, nothing happens to her. It costs her nothing. There's no repercussions for having falsely accused someone of something. There's nothing. And of course, I suppose he could take her to court and sue her, but you can't get blood out of a stone.
It is very difficult, Joel, to prove malice. Very difficult to prove what somebody was actually thinking when they filed for a GVRO. So they basically have license to lie.
That's what it is. It's a license to lie and ruin people's lives.
That's correct.
Who are law-abiding, honest Californians.
That's correct.
That's what it is.
And do you know how the government substantiates success of the program?
No, but I'm afraid to ask, considering I just watched Gavin Newsom in all of his hair gel glory brag about the successes of California the other day when I thought wait a minute, we have the second highest tax rates in the nation. We have record homelessness. Do I need to list all of the areas in which this nonsense has failed this state, but he somehow thinks it's all a success. So I guess go ahead and tell me. Nothing would surprise me at this point.
Well, the success means that they have issued them. It's strictly on the numbers. guns down there in
Wait,
San Diego County.
Wait, say that
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, the fact that the more they issue, the more successful the program is. There's absolutely no. They say, "Hey, we've issued all of these GVROs, and there have been no shootings, no no suicides." And the more we issue, the fewer there are.
Well,
So it's successful.
actually, at the close of 2019, in spite of all the gun crazy laws we have in this state, California had more mass shootings than any other state.
That is correct. That is correct. California had more mass shootings with all of the gun laws that we have, all of the infringements, everything. And here, we've had more of them.
Yeah,
Just proves
we
the
have.
Gun Patrol doesn't work.
I'm sorry. You know, I meant to bring you onto the show to ask you questions, not blow my stack, but but I'm afraid I've popped a cork a couple of times here. I apologize. All right, so
I enjoy pushing your button, brother.
I know you do, and I love you, man. I really do. But gosh darn it, I'm not a swearing man, but there are days when I got to tell you it's incredibly tempting. So are there any other, I'm afraid to ask, are there any other cockamamie screwball laws that are now coming in 2020 that we didn't have before?
2019 was only the first half of a 2-year legislative session. So all of the bills that didn't make it out last year are now in play, including an excise tax on the purchase of ammunition, probably a half dozen more gun violence restraining order bills. I fully expect that they are going to try to crack down on whole categories of firearms. I expect that they're going to try to crack down on semi-automatics. I expect that they're going to do what they can to get at all of the firearms that ingenious Californians have built in order to be able to comply with California laws that the other side absolutely hates.
I love the way you said ingenious Californians. Yes, that's wonderful. Anyway.
Yeah, I expect that they're going to come with everything. I expect that they're going to push this envelope as far as they can. Part of it is because I believe that they know that they are under the gun. No pun intended. Not pun fully intended.
Why do you say that? Because of the Supreme Court and because of the changes that Trump has made in the court system?
Yes. I do believe that there are staff people and even members of the legislature who are saying, "Oh crap! If they do this, they get to wipe the slate clean." So
well, and I'll tell you, that's entirely possible.
Absolutely.
It'll take time and money, but that is entirely possible. If the Supreme Court makes the kind of sweeping changes we're hoping for, and I think reasonably expecting, it's entirely possible that the vast majority of California and New Jersey and these other restrictive gun states are going to have the chalkboard wiped clean.
That's correct, and that's one of the reasons that I believe that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has withheld from hearing multiple gun cases that they have, ready to be considered. They are waiting to see what the Supreme Court does. If they do give direction on that, it's going to save them a lot of time. The nutty ninth is no longer the nutty ninth. It's not the cable court it used to be. Well, one or two judges short of being a solid court.
Yeah, I mean, Trump has replaced so many of them, and he's still doing it. I mean, between him and I'm not a big fan of Mitch McConnell, to be honest with you, in a lot of ways. But by George, I'll tell you what, when it comes to getting judges done, that man has been a juggernaut. And I'm very grateful for him because he's pushed them through. And I'll tell you, it's super important in November that Trump be reelected and that we maintain, at minimum, we keep the Senate. and with a solid majority. And if we can grow the majority, great. I mean, it'd be great to get the House back and throw old Nancy Pelosi out the door. But if we could just keep the Senate and watch those judges, I mean, he's still got a bunch more to appoint, and they're not slowing down. They put the pedal right to the floor. What is it? Mitch McConnell said what is his slogan? Leave no appointment behind, or whatever it is. Let no appointment be left behind. He's just cranking them right through. So the nutty ninth, if you're in California or you're in a state that's overseen by the Ninth Circuit of Court of Appeals, that's not the kangaroo court it used to be. We have some actual hope there.
That's correct.
So
that's correct, and I think that the newly appointed judges are informing the Chief Justice of the Ninth and other long-term members that there's a new sheriff in town and things are going to be changing, and to the liberal juggernaut is not going to come out of the Ninth anymore, and we don't understand, and we don't know all of the conversations that they have in those paneled walnut walls in the courts. But let me tell you, they have some amazing conversations, especially when they come from our folks, where they're now standing up to the liberal establishment, the swamp that exists in the courts, and they're telling them things are changing here, folks. And while Nancy and the Speaker Pelosi was running impeachment in the House at the end of last year.
Yeah, don't get me started about that.
McConnell was passing judicial appointments one after another, and the news didn't even hardly cover it.
They're they're over 170 right now. Yep. I think he's appointed over 170 conservative justices to the federal bench.
Yep,
that's amazing. I mean, a lot of these. I think that's one of the reasons why they wanted Hillary to be president, is because they knew she would fill up the court with liberal whack.
Lefty loonies. Yep.
Yeah, she would.
You're absolutely correct.
She absolutely would. I did write down. We're talking about judges here, and it made me think of it. You know, I'm getting to be an old fart. My brain doesn't work anymore. So, or so I'm told. Anyway, I wrote down Judge Benitez here because he's been quite the friend of the Second Amendment.
Yes.
And it seems to me, has he got a case before him now? Is it the ammo case, or what's he got before him now that we're waiting on?
He's got the ammunition case. He's got an assault weapons case. He's got multiple cases. And what we learned, something that the other side has been doing for many, many years, and for some reason we haven't been doing it. Once a judge rules on a significant case and they develop a certain level of experience and expertise on an issue, when cases are filed, they can request that he consider taking that case, so it doesn't go into the
you don't want it to go into the pool assignment, because you get whoever you get, right?
That's correct,
right?
So Justice Benitez has been accepting these cases, and I'm telling you, this guy is a true originalist in the very best sense.
Yeah, he really is.
He believes the Constitution. He believes in the Second Amendment, and he is very thoughtful about doing his due process and his due diligence to make sure that his rulings will stand up. I mean, the wisdom, Joel, that he had on Freedom Week, when he issued the stay on the magazines here in California.
What? I'll tell you. Please do explain why he did that, because I got a lot of people that are upset with him because he issued the stay, but they don't understand. Had he not issued the stay, it would have been much worse. So go ahead and explain that, please.
So when he issued the stay that suspended the law, the Attorney General was going to appeal the case. He has to appeal it with the judge, and then he had the ability to appeal it with the Ninth. Had the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals appealed the stay, they would have overturned it immediately, and all high cap magazines or large capacity magazines in the state of California would have been illegal. Judge Benitez understood that if he suspended his stay of the law, or stayed his injunction, is I think the proper way, that he could set the date for the implementation of that stay. And that's when he gave us that 1 week that in essence legalized all magazines in the state of California that have been here that might not have been legal to possess at the time. They all of a sudden magically became legal, and Californians had 1 week to buy all of the magazines of any kind, any size they wanted to, and then the stay would go into effect. So what did Californians do? They responded by buying well over 1 million magazines in 1 week.
That we know of.
That we know of.
That we know of. And see, that's the key. I've talked to so many law enforcement officers, and all the cops I know are so pro-Second Amendment, it's almost frightening. And they're all here in California. Now, a lot of them are federal, some of them are state. But it's interesting, I talk to the guys that are state, they're state certified, post certified here in the state. And they will all tell you that the magazine law at this point is completely and totally unenforceable.
Correct.
And the reason it's unenforceable is because of what Judge Benitez did in giving us that week.
That's correct.
During that week, here's how it used to go, just so in case you're wondering. If you had a magazine, there was a grandfather, it was grandfathered. So if you had it prior to the previous ban, it was grandfathered, but they're not serialized. So there's no way to prove that you had it before the ban, but at the same time, there was no way for law enforcement to prove that you didn't, unless A, you told them, or B, the magazine didn't exist back then.
That's correct.
And so if they caught you with a magazine they got you with a PMag. Well, PMag wasn't around back then. Or they got you with a magazine for a gun that didn't exist yet. Or they got you, then all of a sudden you were stuck. All those magazines, you couldn't just shut up and let them try to prove that you didn't have it back then, because they could prove it because it didn't exist. So Judge Benitez now gives us that week, which means now there's 1 million or more of these modern magazines which have now legally entered the state and are legal to possess and use. Law enforcement can no longer say, well, that didn't exist before, so that can't be legal. Which means, for all practical purposes, unless the individual that has the magazine volunteers the information and says, oh, yeah, I bought that, and, I brought that in from out of state. It's the government's responsibility to prove that you didn't buy it during Freedom Week. There's no other test. So if you and I, regardless of how we got them, simply shut up, those magazines are legal, and as a result, law enforcement is not enforcing it. The only place they're trying to enforce it is if they're arresting a banger or something, and they're trying to get them and see if they can figure out a way to tack on additional charges. But those things are completely unenforceable in the state. And it's all because of Benitez choosing when to issue a stay rather than allowing the Ninth Circuit to make that choice, because they would have done it, as Sad said, right now, and we wouldn't have had that week gap.
That's correct.
The man is brilliant.
They would have had the ability to totally enforce the law, which means that everybody would have had to dispose of all of the
cough them up, turn them in, get them out of the state. That would have been them.
Do what? Yeah,
right.
Take them to the police department.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like anybody's going to do that. Sure, I will. Yeah. Okay, so now at this point, the magazine law is dead for all intents and purposes in the state of California, as long as the owners just shut up and don't volunteer when they got it or whatever.
You're correct. It is dead, but it is still on the books, and it needs to be stricken.
It needs to be completely dead. It's not completely dead, but Judge Benitez drove a stake through its heart to some degree. It's just not buried yet.
Yeah.
So he has a couple of cases. I assume he's doing the same thing probably, which is holding off to see what happens with the Supreme Court before he issues a ruling on any of these, or do you expect a ruling out of him?
Well, I actually expect him to rule on the ammunition law here in the state of California. I hope that he does. He required the Department of Justice to provide the information. That's how we found out that 345,000, 547 background checks were conducted, because the Department of Justice had to provide that information to Benitez at his request, and they had to provide the information as to how many people were denied and how many people they actually caught. he asked for all of that information to help him make his decision whether he's going to issue an injunction on the ammunition law here in the state of California. And if he does that, if he enjoins the law, that means that we go back to the way it used to
Buy
be.
ammo however you want, no background check, order it online.
Mail order, yep, all of that stuff, which would be a beautiful thing.
Well, and the Ninth Circuit is not the court it was previously either, because it's been adjusted by the president mightily. So that's interesting. At this point, looking at his Benitez's decisions so far, it will astound me if he doesn't look at 60 some odd thousand law-abiding Californians thus far being denied their rights in an unwarranted fashion, and if he doesn't see that as a gross infringement of the Second Amendment right, and and put an injunction against the law. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yep, and Joel, the reality is that there is nothing that the Department of Justice can afford to or technically do to fix the system, because you're asking for multiple databases that don't really talk to each other, don't coordinate with each other. The collection processes for adding data to the databases, they are not compatible. It takes human interaction in order to put all of this information together in order to make this law comply.
Never going to happen.
There is no common sense.
No.
If your driver's license says, I live at 10 Maple Street, spelled ST period, and the last time you wrote out a DROS, you put 10 Maple Street, STREET, those records do not match up, and you will be denied your right to buy ammunition.
And so somebody has to manually match those, which means you're telling me that my right to buy ammunition in the state of California is dependent upon bureaucrats who are roughly equivalent to the people who work at the DMV.
I couldn't have said it better myself, man.
Ever been to the DMV?
Oh, yeah, I have.
Yeah, okay, well, there you are. So, I mean, at that point, yeah, is that an infringement? Yes. And
Yes,
hopefully Judge Benitez sees it that way. Are there any, did we cover the law changes and the things that we're facing, or is there more that we need to talk to about that?
No, those are the laws that we are facing. Implementation on most of them is going to be July 1st of 2020 or July 1st of 2021, if it requires regulations and the issuance of certifications and stuff like that. So go to our website at gunownersca.com, click on the top bar for legislation, and then current legislation. Click on that. It'll give you the list of all of the bills, the actual text of them. If the governor wrote
if you have a case of insomnia, you can read that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Are there any? I'll put that link in the description, by the way. So if you're watching this right now and you don't want to have to hunt for that, I'll put the link in the description. And I will tell you right now, this is just an aside here. And this is a shameless plug for gun owners of California. So here you go. If you're not a member of Gun Owners California, then you should be. Please join. I am a member and a contributor and so on, and I will be a member until I'm dead. And I might even do like some of these dead people do and try to vote afterwards and be a member anyway. I'll have to see if I can work that out. Are there any cases before judges that we should be paying attention to in addition to the ones that Judge Benitez has right now?
Yes, the Ninth Circuit has Young versus Hawaii. That's an open carry, concealed carry case from Hawaii that they're holding. We have New Jersey State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Grewal, who is the Attorney General of New Jersey, that has to do with so-called assault weapons and concealed carry, and that is on docket with the Supreme Court. So they are they're considering whether they should grant it certiorari. There are probably 7 or 8 other cases that are
So let's wait a minute. Let's stop right there with the whole Supreme Court thing. Just let me make sure I understand. They've granted cert to the New York case, but now they have to determine whether, by virtue of the fact that New York has changed the law and the state has preempted them from changing it back, whether that case is moot or not. In which case, if they accept the fact that if they accept it as moot, they won't hear it. If they don't accept it as moot. No, I'm sorry, they won't rule on it. They did hear it, but if they accept it as moot, then they won't give a ruling beyond its mootness.
Correct.
But if they're queued up is actually, it seems like the other case is actually maybe a stronger case for them to hear, isn't it?
No question about it. There are 6 or 7 other cases that are in line that the states are not going to be able to pull a New York City, New York State sort of a moot fest to try to invalidate the case that is before the Supreme Court. So there are multiple cases. Remember, in the Supreme Court, it only takes 4 judges to accept a case and 5 judges to approve a case. So we have.
Well, you got where the Second Amendment is concerned. You've got Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Thomas, who's been wanting to hear a Second Amendment case. There's 3 of your 4 right there. And then you got Alito, who's been kind of wanting to hear a Second Amendment case. So there's your 4 to hear it right there. The only fly in the ointment potentially would be Chief Justice Roberts, but he's as wacky as he's been in other areas. He's been darn solid where the Second Amendment is concerned so far. 100%
pro Second Amendment record. So if people want to criticize him, I say, hey, put up or shut up. This guy's been rock solid on the Second Amendment. He hasn't issued the opinions and stuff, but his vote is what counts. And he's been rock solid. So, and then we've got tons of other cases that are in play. Well, we have Rody versus Becerra. We have Duncan versus Becerra, which is the magazine ban. So he's on that one. We have Rupp versus Becerra. Challenges the assault weapons, constitutionality of the assault weapons ban. We have Villanueva versus Becerra. It challenges the regulations on assault weapons. So there are tons of cases. And you know what, Joel? Supporting Gun Owners California, we ask for your support. If somebody wants to support us and have fun while doing it, give us a call at the office and get one of our 52 guns and 52-week raffle tickets. Every weekend of the year, we raffle off 1 gun. You buy 1 ticket for $50, it puts you into 52 raffles, and we have high quality, top notch guns that we give away. But in doing so, not only do you get a chance to win a gun, you become a member of Gun Owners California, and you give us the resources we need to pay for the attorneys who are fighting in all of these cases. You give us the ability to be able to be at the legislature whenever the legislature is considering all of these crazy things. And you give us the ability to be participants in the elections that are coming up this year, which are going to be very important. Here in California, we are way behind the 8 ball, but we are to the point to where the only way we can go is up if we get engaged. And that's what you do when you support Gun Owners California. We don't have all kinds of other programs that we offer. All we do is fight directly and specifically for your right to keep and bear arms in the most impactful areas, in the arenas that really have the impact: the elections, the legislature, and the courts. So
it's one of the battles that we face as you watch this, just so that you know, is the fact that so many folks are uninformed or ill-informed. In other words, they either don't know or what they think they know is actually not correct. Mm-hmm. That's why I do this. That's why Sam and I do this. That's why Rick Travis comes on. That's why we do this, is to try to keep you informed. Mm-hmm. I cannot overstate, if I were to guess a number, I probably would be low, as to the number of comments I see on YouTube and the other places where we post videos that say, why isn't somebody suing about this? Where are the local associations? Why aren't they doing something about this? Where is the NRA? Why aren't they doing something about this? Where is Gun Owners of America? Why aren't they doing something about this? Well, now let me just make sure you understand. You just heard Sam go through a litany of lawsuits that are currently in the courts. They're working their way through the courts. And involved in those lawsuits are the California Rifle and Pistol Association, Gun Owners of California, Gun Owners of America, and the NRA. So you want to know what they're doing? Let me tell you something. I speak to people at those four organizations a lot. They all work hand in hand. They all work together. They fight this battle together, and we need to support them all. There you go. You heard my soapbox here. Now, and when I say support, I've had people say, well, I don't have any money. I can't. Okay, but can you dial a phone?
Yeah.
I don't have any money. Okay, but can you volunteer an hour or two?
Yeah.
If we have to be involved, first of all, we have to be informed, not ill-informed and not uninformed. We have to be informed. So we're working hard here, Sam and I, to help accomplish that. And if you look at their website, look at Sam's blog. It's awesome. You know what? What astounds me is the number of people who will say to me, can you produce a video on this? Can you produce a video on that? And I said, well, I posted the news story about that, three different news stories about that on Facebook and Twitter. Oh, well, I don't use Facebook and I don't use Twitter. Okay, well, that's why you don't know what's going on, right? I look at every day, I look at Sam's blog. Every day I read, when Lori writes something, I read it. Every day I look at the various blogs and I post that stuff on our Facebook page. You should sign up and follow me on Facebook and Twitter, but you should also follow Sam on Facebook and Twitter, and then you're going to know what's going on. You don't have to wait for these videos, and we'll clarify it for you a little bit when we can do a video, because you can't always sit down for an hour. What have we been on, an hour now? And sit down and watch these things for an hour. I realize that, but you can get the information every day in your Twitter feed, every day in your Facebook feed by just following Gun Owners of California, CRPA, GunGuyTV. Follow the ones that you want. And you'll get the information that you need, and you'll get it regularly. And then the resources on, good grief, I get alerts from Sam. I get alerts from GOA all the time. Hey, this is a call for action. And what do? Pick up the phone, send an email. It's not as hard or as time consuming as you think. We're all doing the work for you, really. I mean, Sam's doing the work for you. It's what he's been doing for 30 years. 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. I don't know how long he's been doing it. Long time. He's an old man like me. He's been doing this long time. So I know I'm preaching kind of to the choir, because if you're not a supporter of the Second Amendment, you wouldn't be putting up with me saying this, and you wouldn't be watching it, but you are. So I want to urge you, get involved. If you're already involved, get involved a little more. Just a little more. If you're not involved at all, then get involved. And that's what's going to make the change right there. If you're not, it won't.
Joel, 100%. People don't realize that, yes, we lost Prop 63 that gave us the ammunition and magazine laws, but there were 5 million Californians that voted on our side. 5 million.
Right.
If we had them all fighting for their Second Amendment rights, we can do anything we wanted to in the state of California.
Oh, well, let me tell you something. If we had 5 million Californians actually involved, we'd have sanctuary counties like Virginia. We'd have sanctuary cities like Virginia. We'd have a sanctuary movement happening in the state of California, and I don't mean for illegal aliens. We'd have a Second Amendment sanctuary movement in the state of California. We'd have
something that we are considering right now, Joel.
Let me know, brother, if there's a rally or something you want me to be at or you want me to promote. Let me know when and where, and I will be there.
Joel, I also don't want to give anybody an excuse to not be active. Being a part of one of our organizations is less than the cost of a premium box of ammunition per
right,
year.
One box of ammo a year, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's it.
Is all it takes. Number two, if you can't afford the ammunition, or you're a reloader and you like to reload for $5 a box or something like that, that's not an excuse. Because what you can do is you can tell your friends and your buddies who are not watching GunGuyTV, hey, listen, you need to be informed. Here is the link.
Share it.
Here's where you go and
Right. Share
share
it.
it with as many people as you can, so that people will be informed and be engaged, and some of them will have the ability to have resources to be financially involved. But you need to spread the word. You cannot keep it to yourself. One person in a foxhole is not a very good deal. But if you got
No.
10 or 15 or 20 or 1,000 people in a foxhole, all pointing their guns in the right direction, then we can make something happen. So I want to encourage people, Joel. You're the voice of freedom and liberty. I thank you for allowing me to be on this show with you and share this information with your listeners. I consider you a brother. I know that we agree on
We
the
look
Constitution
exactly alike.
Just exactly alike. Yeah, you see, our names even start with the same letter.
There you go. Hey,
Paredes,
That's it.
No, but there's no excuse. If you want to protect and fight for your rights, you need to be engaged. No excuse.
And that doesn't mean, and it, here's the other thing is I keep getting this stuff. I see it on the internet all the time. Well, get loaded, get ready, it's happening. And what they're referring to is civil war or anarchy or whatever. Look, I'm not a veteran. I'm not a SWAT guy. I'm none of those things. I was a bail bondsman for quite a while, and I've served a lot of felony warrants as a result. That's not the safest thing in the world to do. Every once in a while you hear about a bondsman getting killed doing that. I've owned a security company where we did explosives and narcotics detection with canine teams. It's not the safest thing to do. Once in a while you hear about somebody getting killed doing that. I've done some dangerous things in my life. I think we got to get out of the video game mentality that somehow we're going to go shoot our way into freedom. It's not a video game. It's also not necessary. We have a great country that the founders gave us, and we have an outstanding system that the founders gave us and their incredible wisdom. I marvel at the wisdom of these men so many years ago. If we just apply ourselves to the system we have, we will take our freedoms back. And we'll do it without a shot.
100%.
We'll do it without one act of violence.
Amen.
And so this idea that we're all going to have a civil war or we're going to shoot our way into our rights is not only absurd, but it's extraordinarily dangerous. And more dangerous for us than it is for anybody else, because we will end up destroying the very country that we love. We can't do that. All right, Sam, I'm sorry. I'm soapboxing today a lot. I apologize. But is there anything else that we did not discuss that we ought to talk about?
I think we pretty well covered most of the legislative issues, the judicial issues, the facts that we have a very, very important election year coming up. Very important. And people need to understand that here in California, our primary is going to be in March, early March instead of June. The California legislature wanted to have some sort of an impact on the federal election, so they moved our election earlier in the year. And it's
yeah, I know. It's almost okay. It's hard to imagine.
It's very important. It's very important.
Like I said, I'm not a swearing man, but from time to time, I'm terribly tempted. Really.
So let me put it this way: we have the best economy we've had in all of our lifetimes. We have the lowest unemployment rate amongst every category, minority or majority of people. Yeah. We have gold at the highest level that it's ever traded. We have stock market at the highest level it's ever
check
traded.
Your 401k if you got one. Or whatever.
That's right.
Because you won't believe what you got now that you didn't have 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Interest rates, interest gains of between 15 and 30% for people's 401ks. Yeah. People that lost entire retirements under the previous administration and the debacle, financial debacle, the economic debacle we had then, are now regaining and surpassing what they had in their accounts. If you like all of that, this important, this election is extremely important. Extremely important. Yeah. Not only, here in California, it probably won't go for President Trump.
No, but I'm going to vote for him anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
As is my wife, as is my son, right? Yeah.
Yep. But I think that we are on the precipice of incredible progress, and I mean progress in moving this country forward towards freedom and liberty, as opposed to the progressiveness that the left is wishing for. But it just takes us to be engaged and involved. That's all. We got to make up our minds and say, hey, listen, I've got a chicken in my pot. I've got a car in my garage. It's full of gas. I got a job. I got a family. I got a church. I get to eat at McDonald's whenever I want to eat at McDonald's or anywhere else I want to eat. I got to do something to fight to keep those rights and those liberties and those freedoms. And that's just be engaged. That's it.
Exactly. Now, by the way, I do want to tell you, I don't have a chicken in my pot, but I do have in the coop. And I'm not putting them in the pot because they lay eggs.
Oh, okay.
I don't want those chickens in the pot. All right. Well, listen, thank you so very much, Sam. I really do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you at SHOT Show. Sam is going to see us at SHOT Show, which is coming up in a couple, 2-3 weeks. And he's going to be on the audio podcast. We're going to talk some more about what's going on. I've got a bunch of podcast interviews coming up, and Sam is very gracious to be one of them. I'm looking forward to that. And maybe, Sam, we can have lunch or something while you're there. I would look forward to spending time with you. Please do support Gun Owners of California if you have not already done so. And if you've already done so, please do it again, because all these lawsuits that he mentioned, they all cost money, and they're very expensive. I can tell you, Sam is not, he's not starving to death. Neither am I. But at the same time, he's not knocking down, he's not making a bunch of money either. I mean, he's dedicated to this. He's not making $1 million a year or whatever. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? Wow, what would I do with it? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. But I'm not making a living off GunGuyTV. This is something we do because we're passionate about it. So I urge you to support Gun Owners of California, because they're fighting for your rights, and then support them not just with money, but with some time. And with some time, that would help a ton. Absolutely. Well, anyway, thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. We'll see you at SHOT Show.
We'll see you at SHOT Show. I'm looking forward to it, my brother. Thank you.
Me too. Have a great week and be safe.
You too.
Thank you very much for watching. If you've been with us this long, then you are a stalwart supporter of the Second Amendment. That's for sure. Either that or you're a glutton for punishment. I don't know which. But I'm very grateful for the fact that you hung out as long as you did. Thank you so much for all of your support. I hope you have a wonderful week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.